Vineet will be on with the video soon. Vineet will be on with the video Good afternoon. Welcome to all of you. Good afternoon, Vineet. Welcome to all. Here we are today, this afternoon on the 1st of June, kicking off a very interesting conversation with somebody very close to the ground in India. I would call him that way. A person who probably for most of you who've been tracking the development in the Indian space where most financial institutions have been gone, Vineet is not a stranger at all. To keep it very short and give more time to Vineet, I would just simply put it by saying that Vineet is doing things that probably people haven't dreamt of. And he is walking a path that we haven't seen anybody else walk so far. So if that is not an interesting introduction, then the rest would be boring. So I would start off with Vineet. Vineet, a big welcome from Financial Planning Standards Board this afternoon.
Thank you for having me, Rajesh. Very grateful to be given this opportunity.
Thank you, Vineet. Vineet, I think, like always, we are all interested as students of finance, as students of personal money matters, and also while we do that, as observers of what is happening in our country and in our society. We are always very intrigued when we get to spend time with people like you to understand, what took you to a world which is not traditional finance. And there will always be a beginning to the story. So I have often read, that in some of the things that I've, picked up, that there is a big story. There was a 5,000 somewhere in your life, and then you are where you are now. So I just wanted to start off with that, that 5,000 to now. Over to you, Vineet.
Thank you, Rajesh. Well, I think the reason why I am not in traditional finance is because nobody would have hired me. I am a forester by training, so I am neither a CPA nor a CA, nor a CS, nor any other qualification in finance, so nor an MBA finance. So there was no way any bank would have even hired me as a clerk. So given that, that was not part of my choice. I don't think so I ever understood or knew business. I largely come from a government service family. My father was in government. Traditionally, we are basically from a farming community, so we come from landed family. My personal aspiration was to join Indian Army. For some strange reason, Army never accepted me. So I went to forestry, and I got a job in Balarpur Industries, now part of Avanta Group. And I used to live in a very remote part of Orissa, and I was very happy with my life till I got married. And my wife probably didn't find what I thought exciting as exciting. Hanging cobras and plates was not necessarily what gave her excitement. In our house, we had 3 out of 4 the most deadliest snakes in the country, all residents of my house. So I think sooner or later, I was given an ultimatum to find a better location. I went to IIM Ahmedabad to do research. If you are in a forest, the only opportunity is if somebody academically can pick you up. So with great difficulty, I got that opportunity. I went to IIM Ahmedabad, but for a guy who was chasing bear and elephants to be actually sitting in front of a computer and typing paper was not necessarily the most exciting transition. So I quit, and at that point of time, I just got lucky. There was an interview taking place by government of Gujarat. They were looking for a CEO for probably India's first incubator. Now, this is 1997. Not many people actually understood the word incubator. As a 26-year-old, I also stood in the same line. Though my ambition was not to become the CEO, But as fate would have it, I was hired as the CEO of that organization. I was the CEO for next 4 years. And my job was to convert farmers' innovation into businesses. Now, very important, farmers in India, because they are dealing with all kinds of challenges, keep innovating something new. So, for example, a farmer has come up with a tilting bullock cart. Another farmer has converted a Jeep sachet into a tractor, three-wheel tractor, and they have their own reasons for it. And Keshubhai Patel was the chief minister, and his vision was that something innovative must be done with the farm. So my job was to actually create jobs where people live in rural India by helping innovations of the farmer to move forward. After 4 years of hard work, while I was able to show tremendous success and I became quite popular, but I was also quite aware that I had done very little to really change anything. So while we had some successful companies, but not necessarily anything path breaking. And my conclusions were two. First was that innovations are dime a dozen. What you need is actually risk capital for those innovations to become successful. Because without the input of capital, innovations will remain what they are, innovations. So that was one part. The second part was talent is like water flowing from the hill. It runs from rural India to urban India. Now, how do you take talent back? Because if you are trying to create enterprise in rural India, you need talent there, which is going to scale them up. But if talent keeps running to urban India and then from urban India to metropolitan India and from metropolitan India to San Francisco and New York, then how do you actually create value where people live? And so my second point was that you have to actually take intellectual capital back to where it comes from, which is rural India. Now, with these great ideas, I went to my board. My board was who's who of government of Gujarat. They heard me out. I was 29 by that time. I was reasonably arrogant, short-sighted, and I thought I knew everything, and these guys don't really understand, which is normal and quite okay with young people. So I told them, guys, I want money and I want to do it this, and so they heard me out very patiently. And remember, government of Gujarat has a very different bureaucracy than classical Indian bureaucracy. They were very patient with me. They heard me out. They said, listen, we hired you to do this good job. You are doing it. Why don't you continue doing it? In a huff, I actually quit my job. That was 1st March 2001, actually, 1st March 2001. And then with 5,000 rupees, I started a fund called Avishkar. It was registered in Ahmedabad because I was in Ahmedabad at that time in Pardi. And then it suddenly dawned to me that if you want to run a fund, first you need to understand how to give money. But before you give money, you have to have money. And unfortunately, with 5,000 rupees, I had nothing to give actually. And that became a very hard story. And second part was I had also claimed in my very cathartic presentation to my board that you need intellectual capital. So I was very driven by my statements more than by logic. And so I borrowed 1 lakh rupee and started a company called Intellectual Capital to attract global talent and take them to rural India. Now, think about a 29-year-old forester trying to raise capital to change rural India and then setting up a company to take the global talent to rural India. How stupid and naive can you be? So trying to solve two very large problems at one go without money. And that's what I call is naivete and stupidity are very good companion if you're young. Wisdom is really about telling you what not to do, but naivete is about doing things that people think cannot be done. And so a lot of reason why I'm still around is because I was very young and I chose to do what today even I consider was quite stupid. But stupidity is very important for a nation's growth and for an individual's growth. And therefore, youth should always be allowed to do what they want.
That was like, already setting up the tone for the rest of the conversation, Vineet. I mean, I must say that, maybe the brush with the cobras and the crates and probably some of the elephants early in life give you a lot of courage to speak like this and act like this. I mean, I know that for a fact. You love to hear people who first walk the talk and then talk that walk, right? I mean, I've seen that in many of your conversations. But typically, when I look at it, what you're trying to do is not I would say for the rest of the audience here, not exactly impact investing. And I think before we get to what Avishkar actually does, maybe a little bit from you around, your thoughts on what you see as what is impact investing. And then we'll get to the next question around connecting it with Avishkar or disconnecting it with Avishkar.
So I think it's very important. It's very important for everyone on the other side to understand that I'm doing nothing special. I'm doing something that you see every day in front of you. I'm just trying to solve that problem using capital and the entrepreneurial enthusiasm that India has. So when you look around yourself, and I'm talking about 2010 or 11, you will see a lot of big waste pools. If anybody living in Mumbai, if you go to Devnar, you will see a huge mountain of waste. If you are in Delhi, go to Ghazipur, you will see a huge mountain. And if you are in Bangalore, similarly, Hyderabad, Chennai, I was like you, also seeing it every day. It is an eyesore. It's very bad. It is a health issue. There is a water aquifer issue. There are many things that are happening. And then you see very poor young children actually running up those and actually dragging out dry waste and then trying to sell it, because that's what you call rag pickers. And then you actually know there is an informal economy of kabadis and there is a recycling economy. So my question to myself was, can you find a person who can actually clean India, and this is much before Swachh Bharat came in, by making money out of India and do it at scale? So not doing 1 ton, half ton, 300 ton. Can you do thousands of tons or hundreds of tons every day? Now, that's what I'm looking for. So this is one example. Similarly, can you actually, there are so many people who go to money lenders. Can you find a way which is financially sustainable, where government doesn't give you any subsidy? Build a business that can provide poor what they need in whatever manner they need, and yet be businessly sustainable. That's how I actually became the largest investor in microfinance, much before the term microfinance became known to most of the people. I gave you an example of waste. I gave you an example of financial inclusion, and I'll give you an example. And so this has nothing to do with finance. It's very simple. Any poor person needs money, and banks are there to provide money, but banks will tell you they cannot provide money to a poor person because the poor person cannot come to the bank, does not need this thing, will not provide the money, we don't trust him, doesn't have a this address, that address, this, that. So there will be 1,000,000 reasons why you can't. I am searching for those people who have one reason to make it possible. So what is impact investing? It is a process of searching for that individual who has a solution to a very obvious problem that everybody thinks cannot be solved. That's what impact investing is. Now, how do? You find that person, and that's where we take the venture capital approach. You find that person, you hear that person's idea, you help that person put together a team, you give that person money, and you tell that person, please go and with braveness, please execute on your idea so that you can solve that problem. At the end of it, what is happening is this person is trying to build a business. In the process, he's either cleaning India or he is including poor in financial services, or he's helping agriculture income of the farmers go up, or he's actually helping artisans to sell their products to rich Indians, or they are actually helping farmers to grow millets, which is actually our core crop. Today in COVID, you're hearing of black fungus, and this black fungus is actually impacting those people who have diabetes. And why is India the world capital of diabetes? Because Indians are not used to eating millets, not used to eating wheat and rice. We started eating wheat and rice very lately, and because our bodies are not designed for wheat and rice, we become diabetic. And now that diabetes is causing you all kinds of complications when you're dealing with COVID. So how do you take Indians back to millets? Now you will tell me, oh, go and tell farmers to grow millets. No, farmer already know how to grow millets. Not only that, millets do not consume water. You need to conserve water. Well, water and wheat and rice consume water. Millets do not consume as much pesticide as wheat and rice consume. So how do you convince farmer when nobody wants to eat millets? So you have to find a person who has a model or a way to convince rich people to eat millets. And that's how we created a company called Soulful, where you find a young man who actually has figured out a way to convert millets into high-end breakfast cereal. So the rich Indians are willing to pay through their nose for a good health, for buying millets, And that will help farmer to get remunerative price for growing millets. And the country in the process will save water. The country in the process will save pesticides, will make a better health, and your old grains will come back. So impact investing is an approach not necessarily to take India back from where it was, but essentially to get the good things happen with a business model while you make money. That's it.
Amazing. I mean, and one of the other things that I was able to connect as I was listening to you was the fact that while you can genuinely create impact by supporting a thought, an idea, the backward and forward integration of making sure that it is an end-to-end idea is extremely essential. And that's what you were just alluding to, right?
So I think if you understand impact investing, you have to understand where you are sitting, your context very deeply. For example, you need to know that Indians used to eat millets, that
Yes.
wheat and rice is not necessarily the best thing for you.
Absolutely.
I think you will know minimum support prices for wheat and rice. so the government, so we are actually, so you have a system
Yeah.
that is perpetuating negative things because the system is actually trying to solve short-term problems. Impact
Yes.
investing is taking risk to solve the long-term problems while dealing with the short-term problems. And that is why you require to understand your context and you need to understand how you will solve it. It's complex and it is simple. It is very simple because eating jowar and bajra is not really rocket science. But it is complex because you have to find a solution that in an obvious term, no Indian want to eat jawar and bajra, except when you are 50-year-old or you have a health issue or somebody has told you have to eat it, otherwise you will die. So that is where I'm again, people from South India will say we eat ragi. Well, you eat very small amount of ragi and that's really the problem. The problem is we are eating it as if we are eating a biscuit. That's not good enough. And that's really has to change.
I mean, on a lighter note, I must say that closer to lunchtime, so I'm reminded of the bajre ka khichda I eat when I get to spend time with my friends from Rajasthan. So I'm sure that that's an amazing dish too. So I can vouch for what you're saying. You know, it need not be the hobnobs, but actually it is a very tasty meal. So millets are great. I can say that for sure. But coming back, Vineet, so there is a clear difference, therefore, because we see impact investment funds, we see a lot of, media around impact investing. And part of the reason why we wanted to have this session as well for the aspiring, students of, the aspiring students as well as professionals who are picking up this learning around, personal financial matters was also to provide them the understanding of, there is more to it than just traditional finance. Because I mean, we must also accept the fact that this is an area that is picking up in India. Maybe it is currently exclusive to institutional participation, but there are models evolving, including some of those that you are trying to put together to involve even the larger masses, which means then the professional or the next generation or the would-be professional needs to be aware that such market infrastructure institutions would exist, such vehicles would exist, and such fund managers like you, and not just fund management, but people like you who come out with various solutions exist. So today's intention is also to bring that awareness in front of everybody. So would you like to just spend some more time on how Avishkar is different from the typical impact investing that we get to do?
Let me actually, Rajesh, try to give people an understanding of what is impact investing, how it originated, and then who are the players instead of focusing on Avishkar. So I personally started in 2001. Similarly, when I started in India in 2001, Ronald Cohen or Ronnie Cohen, who is the founder of Apex Partner in Europe, also started a venture called Bridges Venture, which with a similar kind of aims. Just that we come from very different background. I was a forester trying to actually solve a problem. Ronnie Cohen was a very rich and successful fund manager who wanted to use the fund manager skills to create opportunities in rural Britain for, let's say, setting up a 5-star hotel in rural Britain, etc., etc. So, but with the objective of creating employment, local employment, etc. And at the same time, a lady called Jacqueline Novogratz started Acumen Fund, or at that point of time, Acumen Fund, but slightly differently. She chose to sit in US, raise capital, and then help people in India, Pakistan, and Kenya through an investing model. So we all started from very different parts of the world at the same time. Coincidence, we actually did not know each other. Of course, at some point of time, our paths crossed, but we did not know. Now, the term impact investing got coined in 2008 when few of us, around 15 or 20 people, met in Italy to say we are all trying to do the same thing. We are all struggling in our individual zones. What is it that we are trying to do? And how can you convince the global capital market to participate in this change? And in 2008, the term that we accepted to call ourselves was used as impact investing. And there were two definitions that were associated with the term impact investing. One was you should have an intention. That means impact is made. So we acknowledged upfront, everybody makes impact. So ITC makes impact, Unilever makes impact, Tata's make impact, Reliance make impact. But if you are an impact investor, you have to claim that you are going to make an impact. You have to intentionally show you are going to make an impact. And then you should be open for being evaluated against your claim. So you have to make a claim, I am going to make an impact. And then you should be producing an impact report that will be their way by which Rajesh can evaluate me on my performance. And that is what we'll call as impact investing. Now, there are two extremes of this, the interpretation of this definition. One extreme is if I put impact behind my name, so Rajesh Krishnamurthy impact means I have already said I'm making impact. And if I can spend some 5 lakh rupees to produce a very glossy and nice report on the impact we are making, then I'll become an impact investor. So that's actually one variety of impact investor. And there is a second variety of impact investor, which actually explains to you why they are making impact, how they are making impact, and are willing to be actually challenged and questioned on it. So these are the two impacts. Now, what has happened? It's important to understand what has happened. 2008 and we are in 2021. So 13 years have passed. In those 13 years, we set up something called Global Impact Investor Network, or GIN, which has gone to the rich in US and Europe and convinced them to have a line called impact investing in their capital allocation. As you know, most of you are financial planners, that you go and tell people, okay, you do debt, you do equity, you do liquid funds. So these are the proportions. Similarly, globally, all funds have to have a line where they will allocate. Otherwise, Vineet Rai, the person may like me, but he or she cannot give me money. So it was important to have an allocation to impact investing. At this point of time, when I speak to you, that allocation stands between $750 billion to $1 trillion. Now, that's a significant movement for a society, for a system that did not exist 13 years back, that we have now convinced roughly 750 billion to close to $1 trillion to now classify itself in impact investing. Of course, some of these will be on the classification on the upside that I talked about, very thin impact focus, and the others will be very high on impact focus. But the fact that around 750 billion to 1 trillion of global capital already identifies with this movement tells you the size and scale of this movement. So that's actually one part of it. The second part of it, which is very important and critical, is that the global pool of capital is 300 trillion. That means the entire world together has $300 trillion of capital. Now, that's a very large amount of money. India's, for those people who understand, just to understand the context and size, India's entire GDP is $2.5 trillion, give and take a little bit, with an ambition to reach 5 trillion. So the global pool of capital is huge, very, very, very large. Now, Vineet's ambition has been, and that's how I started, we need to not convince those who want to give away some amount of money for charity. Because those who are giving away small amounts of money for charity, globally all put together, barely meet. And this includes every government. So this includes OPEC, this includes USAID, this includes OECD. Anybody who is doing any kind of donor commitment, including Government of India, all put together is 300 billion. versus 300 trillion. Why would I spend my time on trying to pinch money from 300 trillion for 3 billion of humanity when $300 trillion of capital is available to pinch money? That's the theory. How do you actually convince the 300 trillion to give away small amounts of money? For them, 2 trillion will be small amount of money. For 300 billion, 1 billion will be a small amount of money. 1 billion doesn't help anyone. But 2 trillion, 3 trillion will make a huge difference in changing the lives of the 3 billion who are at the bottom of the pyramid. So that's the power of the statement. The statement is, how do you convince the 300 trillion to come? I will again connect to a global thought process. There is something called Sustainable Development Goals. 193 governments of the world have signed this agreement. And this was the first time in 2015, the presidents and prime minister of 193 to 194 countries came together to imagine a world free of hunger, free of poverty, free of inequity by 2030. This is a very audacious goal. The entire governments have been forced and geared up to meet this goal. I genuinely believe impact investing, therefore, is going to see a tsunami of capital allocation. The reason we have been successful in moving to 1 trillion is simply because suddenly there is a waking need, there is a crying need among the governments. How do we meet these targets? Removing hunger, removing poverty, removing inequity is not a small goal. The governments have committed to it, they have to report it, and they will be questioned. And so the institutions like LIC, the SBI, global pension funds, others are going to come under tremendous pressure to allocate significant amount of capital to impact investing. And you are seeing that start happening in India. So for those who are in financial planning, let me tell you that if you have been looking at everything else, the area in a post-COVID world that you have to educate yourself about is what is impact investing and what is the size and quantum of this space is going to be. And finally, only one last word. You must have heard of a term called social stock exchange. Prime Minister, the Finance Minister announced it on the floor of the House Parliament, saying we will launch social stock exchange. I was part of the first committee of SEBI. The second committee report is out as well. Social stock exchange is something that you should read and hear about. It would be the first ever, in my view, regulated social stock exchange that would direct capital in transparent, regulated manner to not-for-profits and for-profits that are making impact. This is happening in India.
Amazing, Vineet. And I was actually getting to that point because two things that were clearly connected, and you said that towards the end of your answer. One was, the fact that there is going to be an upswing in the not just the intention to do it, but also an upswing in the requirement for professionals who understand the space, who can talk this language and who can explain it to customers as well and clients as well. That was one area. The other was your social stock exchange perspective that just came out, because I was just going to mention that, typically what we see is when we talk about capital, much of the time the capital gets converted into more of a debt or a debt instrument or a debt security and structure revolving around debt. But somewhere I felt that India is taking that lead towards moving from a debt structure towards an equity participation or an equity structure, even in the area of impact. So, how do you see that coming up now? Do you see any changes there?
So, Rajesh, I think it's very important for everybody to understand the risk-reward paradigm. And we have to also understand incremental change versus paradigm change. So, now, the first and foremost is, what is debt? Debt is actually an activity where you cap your returns because you believe you're capping your risk. And the capping of risk takes place by creating a collateral or a security, right? Now, the unfortunate reality, as the Indian banking sector has learned over a period of time, that when you give a loan and if the business goes kaput, any amount of security, it does not really pay for it, because security needs to be liquidated. There is a legal process. It's very difficult, etc., etc., etc. So really, debt has to understand cash flows and business 100 times better, and also needs to understand to evaluate the capability of the businessman beyond the security they're offering. So that's actually the first part, what is happening within debt. I mean, you have been seeing big, huge defaults, largely because incompetent people have been given money because they had large securities. And competent people are made to become managers because they don't have securities to offer. So that's really what happens. Now, what does equity do? Equity is essentially comes in and says, hey, I understand that there is a chance of failure. Because there is a chance of failure, I also understand I cannot cap my returns. Because whosoever succeeds should pay me for the failures that I'm taking in. And I have to build a portfolio. That means I have to not give money to one person. I have to give money to 10, 15 people so that I can manage a portfolio of risk rather than one single risk. And this management of portfolio of risk, which requires identifying the person, giving them money, requires very active and proactive participation in the management process. And that's why a venture capital model is very useful. Now, the minor difference where impact investing and equity and venture capital differ is equity can be listed equity. It could be unlisted equity. Within unlisted equity, you can do venture capital, which is actually taking a risk on technology. So where you actually close your eyes and say, hey, technology will play a big role, so I will keep investing in technology. You can call it a spray and pray model. You actually give money to a lot of people, and then 2 people succeed, and you feel very happy about it because the returns could be 100x, even if you lose 80% of your investment. Second, you build ecosystems. Silicon Valley is an ecosystem where talent, people, capital, networks, academics, everybody exists in the same place, which inherently increases the probability of success. Because the ecosystem in India, Bangalore is an emerging ecosystem, especially for tech companies. So you either follow a pay and spray approach or you follow an ecosystem approach. An ecosystem with a pay and spray approach has a much higher chance of success. That's what venture capitalists do. Again, venture capital is not just spray and spray. They have to do follow-on investing. They have to be very active. They have to help companies find. But there is a lot of things go. I'm being very casual when I say it's spray and spray. When it comes to Avishkar and it comes to impact, we are following the same model where we are saying equity is going to play a disproportionately paradigm shifting role in allowing a person who is competent to become successful because that person has a powerful idea. More so, it will help the society also do well, and a lot of poor people will come into the mainstream because this person is driven by making that difference. Now, will I, every time I give money, can I actually guarantee that person will not become a bad guy? No, there is no guarantee. So I'm also taking a risk on the person's intent. I don't have a meter where I took out some flesh from the person and kept it in my pocket that I can actually, by checking the flesh, I can know that he's going to be a good person. We don't know. We actually make an assessment, you make a judgment, and you hope and pray he follows that path. And you put some guardrails around it. That's what impact investing is about. In the process, you create a profitable business that is inclusive, and you can sell money and come back. In general, impact investing fund is trying to, on a portfolio basis, trying to generate a 15% rupee return, can try to do a 20% return. In some cases, can completely exceed your expectation and deliver 25% INR return. Most of us raise most of our money in global markets. So we have to commit to a dollar return. Generally, we commit to dollar returns between 16 and 20%. In a 30-year time horizon, dollar depreciate by 3.5% every year. So when you say a 20% dollar return, you are effectively committing a 24% rupee return. Very thumb rule-ish. I'm just going very thumb rule. That's how we calculate our returns. Now, you take people's money, you identify these people, you give them this money, and you make these investments. That's really the process of impact investing. Yes. But the most important thing is not identifying these people and giving them money. The most important thing is exiting or taking the money. So any impact investor in the world, their first job is not to take money from somebody and give it to somebody, but to figure out a way of how they will exit. So we are in the business of exits, not of investment, because anybody can give and distribute money to anyone. But if you can only distribute, cannot collect it back, then you don't know the process of investing. So it is a game of generating exits and not about finding a good guy to give money. There is a flip side to it. A lot of time people think that if you find a great idea then exit will happen automatically. That is wishful thinking and very close to pray and spray model.
Understand. Oh, that is amazing because this is not what we get to hear. In typical conversations, and we don't learn this even in school. In traditional theory, that we don't keep the investment decision based on what the exit opportunity is. We rather start looking at, okay, what are the investments, what are the returns, and all of that. But keeping the exit in mind is, keeping that as the first thing, is something that's a complete change to the way money is being put on the table in the first place. But again, Vineet, but you haven't stuck just to India. I have seen that there is a lot of interventions you do in Africa as well, for example. So is there something that you wanted to mention? Because we don't want anybody to carry a feeling that, it's only meant for countries like India, right? I think you are also able to show that this is possible, not just in India, overseas as well. So some thoughts on that?
Amongst the hundreds of funds in India that exist, there are hundreds of funds in India. We are probably the only Indian fund that is an international fund. So there are a lot of international funds that operate in India. But there is no Indian fund manager who has actually thought about going international. We are the first one. I don't have any research to back it, but a lot of people have said that you are probably the first one. So Avishkar probably is the first Indian fund manager who has tried to actually set up, not impact fund manager, any fund manager, who has tried to go outside India and has built up funds and actually invested. So we invest in Bangladesh, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and we are now raising a fund for East Africa. But Avishkar, and I did not tell you the full story about Avishkar. So I started with $100 or 5,000 rupees. And after a lot of struggle in 2010, I reached $27 million. So I went from $100 to $27 million in 2010. And in the last 10 years, I have gone from $27 million to around $1.2 billion. In the next 10 years, we believe we will go from $10 to $12 billion in terms of assets under management. So our progression has been from $100 to 27 million, from 27 to roughly 1.2 billion. And from 1.2 billion, we expect by 2030 to grow by 10 times. Some people call it over-ambitious, some people call it under-ambitious. But forever, whatever it is, right now, that's our target. Under or over-ambition, I don't know. Time will tell whether we are able to meet those targets or not. Avishkar also evolved as an investor because I was taking very high early risk. I also behaved like an entrepreneur. So today, Avishkar is called Avishkar Group. Avishkar Group is actually 51% owned by me and my colleagues, 49% owned by 4 very large global investors, Nuveen, which is Teachers Insurance, American Annuity Pension, globally third largest pension fund, manages close to $1 trillion, is the second largest investor. FMO, which is the Dutch Development Bank, owns 10%. Triodos, which is the European bank, owns around 15%. And then Shell Foundation, the foundation of Shell, the big company, owns a small percentage. Between them, they own around 48, 49%, and the remaining 51 is owned by us. Within the group, we have 4 different businesses. One is the Avishkar Impact Capital, Avishkar Capital, which roughly manages $450 million. We have a digital microfinance company called Arohan, where we manage around $700 million. We have actually a micro, small, medium enterprise business called Ashwa Finance, which is an NBFC. We manage roughly around $100 million there. And then we have Intellicap, or Intellectual Capital, company that is set up in 2002, which roughly has 100 consultants and which operates in India, Indonesia, and East Africa, and consults all the big corporations, etc., on how to build ecosystems and how to make impact worldwide. Overall, we have 7,000 employees. In terms of impact, Avishkar has created around 400,000 jobs and livelihoods. So roughly 4 lakh jobs and livelihoods we have created through our enterprises. So we have not created, we have actually helped enterprise create those jobs, of which 7,000 are our jobs. We have also actually reached out. So our enterprises have impacted the lives of around 11 crore people in India, but some in Southeast Asia and some in Africa as well, which I think is a reasonable achievement in the last 20 years. And more interestingly, we have played a significant role in carbon sequestration also, not necessarily necessarily outstanding role, 1.5 million tons of CO2 sequestered, but we intend over the next 10 years to play a very large role in carbon sequestration also. Being a forester, I believe natural resource-based carbon sequestration will play a very important role over the next 10 years, and we intend to play a very significant role going forward. So this is the background.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, sometimes I would want to also confess some of those statements gave me some goosebumps. Thank you for that motivation, Vineet. I must also say, Vineet, that while you were speaking, I was wondering how do we connect what you said with the generation that's watching this, and we'll also watch this later because, as we discussed, we would have this up for our students and the community to watch on YouTube on demand. One of the key things, Vineet, was that there is an involvement, therefore, that the professionals can have, the students can have. They could volunteer. Professionals could speak about it to the clients. The clients could also, graduate in their thinking. Because somewhere I feel that it is many a times it falls on the cusp of neither going the charity way because you're not giving away money to anybody. Neither are you actually going and looking at the typical asset classes, which is the traditional investing. There's something in between, somewhere it's connecting here, but it's not truly here or there. So where do you think, each of these constituents, if you would want to pick up one at a time, students, the professionals, the clients, how could they start participating?
So I think, Rajesh, if you go back to my time, I passed out in 1991 as a graduate. I was a 19-year-old, 1991, with the country actually mortgaging its gold to deal with its balance of payment crisis, right? So that's when I passed out. Now, at that point of time, the only thought that people like me had was, can you get a job? Will there ever be a job? Any salary was fine, right? When we deal with students today, one thing is India has changed dramatically. The top 10% of India, would actually be surely part of the top 30-40% of the global rich economies. The top 10% of India would surely be top 30% of the global rich economies. So we will not be part of the lower part of the rich economy, we will be actually part of the top of the global rich economy. If not really the top 10%, we will be part of the top 30%. A large number of Indians will actually qualify in the top 1% of the US and Europe as well. And this is actually happening in last 10 years. Quantum of wealth generation that you have seen, the number of entrepreneurs, the number of young guys who have become rich is quite exceptional. When all this happens, a lot of people, when your next food is insecure, not secure, is secure actually. If your next meal is secure, you start looking beyond the obvious. Then you are not so interested in what is there in the food because the normal food, good food is available. You are then asking for life-searching questions. And I think the youth of India is today, a large number of them, I will not say everybody, but a large number of them, are today asking that question very vehemently. They want to actually see a country that is doing well. They want to see that they have infrastructure that is running well. They want to see no poverty, no inequity. They want to be equal. They want to do well. This youth, therefore, needs to actually engage with impact investing as a subject because there are answers for their life-searching questions in this model. And therefore, the youth of US, if you go to any top university, Avishkar is a case study in Stanford Business School. Yesterday, I was actually having a discussion. Harvard Business School has a case study on a Brazilian fund, where the founder has said, Avishkar is our inspiration. And yesterday, Chicago Booth students are doing a case study on Avishkar. And they said, we heard about Avishkar, and then lo and behold, we hear a case study on books, and it says, Avishkar is the inspiration. So the interesting part is, Avishkar is a case study in Stanford. It is a case study in Duke's. It's a case study in multiple European institutes. But it is not a case study in most Indian institutes. In fact, if you go, somebody from IIM Ahmedabad wrote to me, we have read case studies on Avishkar, but it was a Stanford case study. This was in IIM Ahmedabad executive program or some program they read. So the fact is, there is a case study that is being used. I think it will be useful for Indian institutions to write more case studies, and students can volunteer to write case studies on impact investing, not necessarily on Avishkar, on the role of India in impact investing, the global size and scale of the opportunity. Because these are cutting edge thought process, and students and academicians and professors should actually engage and learn about it. Same thing. We are dealing with climate change. You have floods, you have drought, you have Yas, you just sent, you had Amphan, you have I forgot the name of the recent one that actually hit us in Bombay. All these massive cyclones and typhoons that we are hitting are all an outpouring of climate change. Now, how do you actually address it and influence it, and what is the role of financial system in that? World Carbon Report just came out, and it essentially said that India doesn't have a carbon trading mechanism. Have we, as you as academics, raised that question to SEBI? I did. I actually told SEBI that we should think about it. We cannot be left behind when the entire world is going to go towards making a significant difference about.
We have lost signal with Vineet. If you're still there with us, I think we have lost Vineet for a short while. We'll hope to reconnect with Vineet. So I just, while we wait on him, let me just try and summarize some of the things that I picked up. And, we just wait and see if we can get Vineet back. But I think Vineet was alluding to the fact that impact investing cannot just be kept aside as a good to know subject. That the carry back for me, the takeaway for me is that we clearly have to see this as an important constituent of our professional plan as well. As students, where do we think we will start contributing? Where do we think we can connect ourselves with? And it's an area which is a blend of both typical financial understanding of where money matters work, where it doesn't work, but also about knowing where money doesn't go. And that was a great piece that we heard from Vineet. Traditional systems of banking, traditional systems of finance doesn't take the money to certain areas, and that is where Avishkar has been going. Sorry, Vineet, while we lost you, I was summarizing some of the learnings so that we keep the engagement going. Sometimes technology, yeah, that's fine. So you were talking about students. We come back to you. You were talking about students, case studies, how they can get involved, and the connected question was, okay, while you talk about students, how about the professionals?
So I think the professionals should see it as a business moving forward. What is the cutting edge global trend that is taking place? Impact investing or similar kinds of thought process that actually connect society with money are the most cutting edge thought process. And these cutting edge thought processes may not be suitable for everyone, but it is important for a lot of evolved people whose money you might be managing. They may want to actually know about these thought processes. So one, you should actually engage and know a little bit about these thought processes, not because it may actually give you 100% new return, but it may actually give you some ideas about how to connect your current society with the money. Because remember, money is a very valuable part of your own being. Can you connect it to the society within which you live? And if you can connect money to the society, you will create tremendous value for your own country and for yourself. So there are lots of people who have earned money who want to know, how do I actually make my money earn for me, but at the same time make my society better? Partly because the security of your future depends on a good society. So a bad, lawless society is not going to conserve your money. So making a good society is in your interest. Similarly, having good climate is in your interest. And that's why people across the globe want to invest money in climate. Because if the climate is bad, then you will not be in existence. So the power, COVID has taught us what what can an external disruption do? And therefore, there is a very strong desire amongst the global pool of capital. And if a large amount of global pool of capital is going to go into societal needs, and if you don't invest in it, then you will lose out on the upside that potentially get created. So that's why it's very important for the profession.
I completely understand. And Vineet, maybe we just have a few more minutes left. Uh, a couple of things that comes to my mind around even the Indian structure, because you did speak about the social stock exchange. I mean, that's an area that we've also been communicating with our fraternity that we need to keep a watch. There is very clearly some amount of, so in a way crowdfunding is an opportunity to participate. Peer-to-peer networking sites, lending sites where uh, using the networks, leveraging on their understanding of credit, they are trying to make some kind of difference. But and then of course you have the traditional microfinance institutions as well. And then some of the NBFCs, I've seen them take a path where they go, more towards the rural and try to make a difference. So there is some amount of change that we are seeing in India very clearly. Like you mentioned, there is change that we can see, which was unheard of 10 years ago. We couldn't even visualize this. But I thought the social stock exchange merited some more insights from you, because you were part of it when that initial thought was there. You were in that first committee as well. So, and then you also connected to how sustainable development goals have an important role to play as we move forward, because everybody is looking at that. So I thought somewhere, there is an interplay between what can come as equity participation opportunities, and then somewhere like, how we have disclosure obligations for, listed entities. There could be many disclosure obligations related to the social stock exchange, much of which I would think that will be very clearly connected to some of the SDGs as well. So any of those aspects that you would like to just share for us?
So I think the idea behind social stock exchange was, how do you make people, again, I'm going by 30% of Indians have become very rich. They want to give back. Their biggest question is, there is nothing that is transparent, there is nothing that is regulated, and there is nothing that actually gives me the confidence to give away significant amount of my money. Because if I'm giving this money to Vineet, is he actually taking it to poor, or is he eating it away in between? We are skeptics, and we are worried about it. Now, the whole idea behind social stock exchange is, can the participation of the regulator, can the ask for regulatory disclosure, can the power that you can actually be questioned and fined, so reprimanded or fined, will that actually create the quantum of transparency that is needed for the rich amongst Indians to open their wallet and contribute and give with heart? Now you're talking about COVID. We are raising hundreds of millions of dollars. A lot of people are raising to support the people. Now, this is the crisis. People are giving during the crisis. Is there possibility that people will give not during a crisis, but any given point of time, so that we actually have a better world? How do we make it happen? That's really the big question. Now, social stock exchange therefore brings in the regulator SEBI into the picture and says, okay, we understand you are going to regulate the kind of instruments that identified entities can put together. Give us some ideas and bring in a stock exchange so that these are transparent, regulated entities and everything can happen electronically. So a not-for-profit wants to raise money, can come with a zero coupon perpetual bond. So you issue a bond. You say you participate, you buy a bond, you buy the happiness of actually making a change in the lives of the people by putting this money into the bond. You get zero coupon for it. You don't get any. Your principal will never come back, but you will have the right to peek and see what changes are being made. And we will obligatedly be filing the changes on the stock exchange so that I have a reputational risk if I'm an NGO guy who's bringing the bond. So that's actually just one kind of criteria. There are many. Similarly, a social enterprise, like let's say I talked about that waste cleaning enterprise. If that wants to actually list, it has an opportunity to go and list on the main bourse. It can go on the SME bourse. It can come to social stock exchange. Of course, the government of India will have to decide that if people are actually investing for making a difference and cleaning up India, should they actually have lesser this thing? Should they have tax benefits? Should they have any other benefits from the investing side? Now that discussion is yet not over. We have made our recommendation. The report is in the public domain. But the government has to take a decision that if you are a for-profit company and you are exclusively making impact and you're recording that impact, by registering on social stock exchange, should the investor who's actually investing in you, should they get some exemption? For example, no capital gains tax, no standard STT, nothing. So I don't know what will happen, but the idea is to create a distinction between those who are working for the society through a for-profit business model, then those who are working for a for-profit business model, but incidentally impact society. So there is a difference, there is a distinction being created. We hope and pray that this stock exchange comes together. We are very confident, given the leadership that is being shown by SEBI, and at the same time also the support that Government of India is providing, that this may potentially become a very productive and value generative stock exchange. Hopefully, one of the main current stock exchange might be actually leading that. So I'm hopeful that all of them will actually be participating in doing it. So this is not really about creating a technological intervention. We believe the stock exchange technology already exists. It is creating a regulatory framework for a different kind of policy.
Very true, very true. So Vineet, before we let you go, I should say thank you so that I leave the last for you to take the thunder. Uh, I actually it's been amazing. I must say while I know I can retrieve this and make notes, I have been making notes as you were speaking. Um, this little thing around most of us, while I have been talking to a lot of youngsters in the last many years, I also noticed that, besides the startup thought process, which, a lot of news and media is ingraining into our young generation in India, there is still a huge amount of sway or a swing towards where do I get my job, right, after I finish my, so seeking job. And it's not that that's a bad thing. It's natural for all of us. All of us have come up that way. So you mentioned that too. But there is something, right? There is something that made you think about it differently. You said, you were naive, you wanted to take a stupid thought. But I maybe in hindsight, you might say it is stupid, but at that point in time, there should have been something else that made you believe, that this will work or I can make this happen. So is there some message that you can from within share with these youngsters who are listening to us today?
So if you are young, the question that you should be asking is not, can I raise money? Is this a great business? What will people think about it? You have to find a question that you desperately want to answer. I actually just wanted to make poor people rich. That was the only ambition I had. And I realized without engaging the poor into the act of business, you can't make them rich because nobody in my family was rich. So I understood that government services don't make you rich, you just survive. So I connected. So my question was very simple. Why are poor? And why do poor want to be rich? More so when society used to tell me rich people are bad people. So then everybody should be poor and should want to be poor, but every poor person I met wanted to be rich. So I saw a dichotomy in the society that rich are bad, but every poor wanted to be rich. That cannot be. If rich is your role model, they must be good. So I think overall, what I understood is making poor rich is a problem that requires solving, and I was very excited by the problem. I had no clue what the solution should be, why it should be, but I was willing to follow it through because it was an interesting question to ponder over. For anybody who is young and he or she gets very inspired by a problem statement and then believes that an entrepreneurial way of going forward, it could be spiritual, it could be entrepreneurial, it could be some other way, I don't really know. So you have to figure it out. then you probably will be convinced to take the jump that is needed. The risk, when you start thinking about what will happen, you cannot take risk. 90% of the world, 95% of the world doesn't want to take risk because we all want a peaceful life. There are some people who are more designed to take risks, others are not designed to take risks. And therefore, I will actually encourage those who don't feel comfortable taking risk to not take risk. There is no reason for you to take risk and put yourself into a very difficult situation because entrepreneurs are nothing better than you. They are as good as or as bad as you are. They just have been designed better. Like, for example, if I want to actually beat the world champion in 100-meter race, I should be physically gifted to beat that person. Just because I desire it shouldn't be going into a 100-meter race to beat that person. So you need to understand yourself well. Do I have the caliber and the capability and natural talent and physical capabilities to actually run in 9.9 seconds 100 meters? If I'm running in 20 seconds, there is no way I will actually ever be a world champion. So then your ambitions, you cannot have wrong ambitions. So again, you have to be naive, stupid, but there is a very thin line between naivete, stupidity, and bravery. If you stand on the cliff and say, Darwin told us that human beings evolve, and so if I jump from the cliff and before I hit the ground, I'll become a bird because Darwin said so, you are forgetting that Darwin said you evolve over 10,000 years. In 1 second, you will not become a bird. So if you jump from the cliff thinking claiming Darwin's theory that you'll be a bird, you will be dead for sure. That's called suicide. So if you don't understand your capabilities or you are backing yourself with wrong theories, then you are going to be a disaster. Understanding and entrepreneurship, finally, I'll end with one simple definition. The definition of entrepreneurship is very simple. A person he or she who understands their personal limitations and excels within those limitations are entrepreneurs. So if you understand your limitation and you excel within them, you are an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter whether you're a microfinance entrepreneur or you are Bill Gates. That's actually up to you.
Awesome, Vineet. Yeah, I wish we were in a room filled with people so that you could hear the thunderous applause after the conversation and the motivation that you've given us. I must really thank you for taking this time out. It's really amazing to have heard you and the opportunity to speak with you. So on behalf of all of us, Vineet, we wish the very best to the entire Avishkar family, the 7,000 plus people who are shoulder to shoulder working on the dreams that you have to make a better world. But you're walking that. So best wishes, and we will catch up soon again. Thank you a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.